If your hydrangea gave you a wall of green leaves last summer but barely a single flower, I want you to know something before we go any further. You almost certainly didn't do anything wrong with watering, feeding, or sunlight. You pruned it. You pruned it at the wrong time, in the wrong way, and you cut off every flower that plant was about to give you. Here's the part nobody tells you. Pruning a hydrangea is not like pruning anything else in your garden. There is no single rule that works for all of them. The exact same cut that makes one hydrangea explode with blooms will leave another one completely bald for an entire season. And almost every gardener finds this out the hard way, usually after they've already done the damage. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to give you 7 rules that actually work, in the order you should think about them. By the end, you'll be able to walk up to any hydrangea, know exactly what type it is, know whether to cut it or leave it alone, and know precisely where to make the cut. No guessing, no more bald summers. Let's get into it. Rule 1. Know your hydrangea before you touch a single stem. This is the rule that everything else depends on, and it's the one most people skip. There are 2 ways a hydrangea makes its flowers, and you have to know which camp yours is in. Some hydrangeas bloom on old wood. That means they form next year's flower buds in late summer and fall on the stems that are already standing there. Those tiny buds sit quietly on the branches all through autumn and winter, waiting. If you cut those stems back in fall or spring, you are slicing off flowers that were already formed and ready to open. The plant survives, it just won't bloom. The classic old wood bloomers are the big round mophead hydrangeas and the flat lace caps, which together are called big leaf hydrangeas. Oak leaf hydrangeas, with those long cone-shaped flowers and leaves shaped like an oak, are old wood too. So are the delicate mountain hydrangeas and climbing hydrangeas. The other group blooms on new wood. These plants don't carry their buds through winter at all. They wake up in spring and grow brand new stems, and the flowers form on that fresh growth in the same season. You can cut these almost to the ground and they'll still flower beautifully a few months later. The 2 new wood types you need to recognize are panicle hydrangeas, which have those big, elongated ice cream cone flower clusters, and smooth hydrangeas, the most famous being the variety with enormous round white blooms. So before you do anything, look at your plant and ask one question: old wood or new wood? Everything that follows hangs on that answer. If you're not sure, take a photo and search the variety name on the plant tag, because getting this single fact right is the difference between a hedge full of flowers and a hedge full of regret. Rule 2. When in doubt, don't cut. I know that's not what you want to hear because you bought the pruners and you're ready to use them. But here is the truth that took me years to accept. The big leaf mophead hydrangeas, the ones most people grow, barely need pruning at all. These plants are not like roses or fruit trees that demand a hard cut every year to perform. A big leaf hydrangea left completely alone will often bloom better than one that gets fussed over. The only cuts it truly needs are the removal of dead wood and the occasional thinning of a stem that's crossing awkwardly through the middle. So if you have an old wood hydrangea and you're standing there wondering whether to shape it up, the safest answer is usually to walk away. Restraint is a skill in the garden, and with these plants, it's the most valuable one you have. The gardeners with the most spectacular hydrangeas are very often the ones doing the least. The mistake I see constantly is someone shearing their mophead into a tidy ball every autumn because it looks neat for the season. It looks neat, and then it blooms nothing the following summer, and they can't understand why. Tidy is not the goal. Flowers are the goal. Put the shears down. Rule 3. Leave the dead flowers on through winter. This one feels wrong, and that's exactly why most people get it wrong. When the blooms on your old wood hydrangea fade and turn brown and crispy in autumn, every instinct tells you to cut them off and clean the plant up for winter. Resist that instinct completely. Those faded flower heads are doing a job. Just below each one sits the new flower bud for next year, and that bud is tender. A hard frost can kill it. The spent bloom and the upper stem act like a little umbrella, shielding the bud underneath from the worst of the cold. Strip the plant bare in October, and you expose those buds to every frost the winter throws at them. There's a bonus too. A hydrangea covered in dried, papery flower heads catching the morning frost is one of the most beautiful things in a winter garden. So you get protection and you get a view. Leave them. You wait until spring when you can see the buds beginning to swell and push out little green leaves, and only then do you go in and tidy up. By that point, the danger of frost is mostly past and the plant is telling you it's safe to cut. Let the plant set the timing, not the calendar, and never the urge to be neat. Rule 4. For panicle and smooth types, build a framework instead of cutting to the ground. Now we flip over to the new wood hydrangeas, because these you absolutely can and should cut hard. But there's a refinement here that turns a floppy mess into a sturdy showpiece, and almost nobody talks about it. The common advice for smooth hydrangeas is to cut the whole plant down to the ground every spring. And it's true, it will regrow and flower. But here's what happens. The brand new stems that shoot up are thin and soft, and then they're asked to hold up flower heads the size of grapefruits. The first heavy rain comes and the whole plant collapses flat on your lawn. You've seen it, beautiful blooms lying face down in the dirt. The fix is to stop cutting all the way down. Instead, leave a low woody framework, somewhere around 18 to 24 inches tall. Each spring you cut back to that same sturdy framework. Over a couple of years, those base stems thicken into proper woody supports, and the new growth that rises from them has something solid to lean on. Same gorgeous flowers, but now they stand up straight instead of belly flopping after the first storm. For panicle hydrangeas, the principle is similar. They bloom on new wood, so you prune them in late winter while they're dormant, and you can take them back fairly hard to shape them. But again, work to a permanent framework of main stems and cut the previous year's growth back to a couple of buds above that framework. You're building a strong skeleton that gets better every year, not starting from zero each spring.
Rule 5. Deadhead shallow, prune deep, and know the difference. People use the words deadheading and pruning as if they're the same thing. They are not, and confusing them is how flowers get lost. Deadheading just means removing a single spent bloom to tidy the plant during the growing season. Pruning means cutting back stems to control size and shape. The danger is doing a deep pruning cut when all you meant to do was a light deadhead. On an old wood hydrangea in summer, when a bloom is finished and you want to neaten things up, follow that stem down with your eyes. Just below the old flower, you'll usually see a fat, healthy pair of buds sitting opposite each other on the stem. Make your cut just above that pair and no lower. Those buds are next year's flowers. Cut above them and you keep them. Cut below them deep into the stem and you've thrown them away, along with the dead bloom. So the rule is simple. Deadhead shallow. Take only the spent flower and the short bit of stem above the first good buds. If you want to do real size reducing pruning on an old wood type, save it for right after the plant finishes flowering in summer, which is the one window where it can recover and still set buds for next year. Never confuse a quick tidy up with a hard cut, because on these plants, the depth of a single cut decides whether you get flowers. Rule 6. Renovate overgrown plants from the base, not the top. Sometimes you inherit a hydrangea that's become a monster. 10 years old, woody, leggy, flowering only at the very top where you can't even see it. The temptation is to grab the shears and give the whole thing a flat top haircut to bring it down to size. Don't. Shearing the top just gives you a smaller monster with all the same old, tired wood inside. The right way to rejuvenate an overgrown hydrangea is to work from the bottom over 3 years with patience. Each year, identify the very oldest, thickest, woodiest stems, the ones that have stopped producing good flowers, and cut those right down to the base of the plant. Make no more than 1/3 of the total stems in any one year. What this does is force the plant to send up fresh, young growth from the ground, while the rest of the plant keeps flowering normally, so you're never left with a bare stump. Year 1, you remove the worst third. Year 2, the next worst third, and the first batch of new stems is already coming up strong. By year 3, you've completely replaced all that exhausted old wood with young, vigorous stems, and the plant is essentially renewed without ever having gone a single season without flowers. Slow and from the base. That's how you fix an overgrown hydrangea. Fast and from the top is how you ruin one. Rule 7. Time the cut to the bloom and make it clean. The final rule pulls everything together, and it has two parts: timing and technique. On timing, hold this in your head as one clear sentence. If it blooms on old wood, prune right after it flowers in summer. If it blooms on new wood, prune in late winter while it's dormant. That single sentence covers almost every hydrangea you will ever meet. Old wood, prune in summer, after the show. New wood, prune at the end of winter before it wakes up. There's one special case worth knowing. Some modern big leaf varieties are bred to rebloom, flowering on both old and new wood through the season. With these, you really can't go too far wrong, but the safest approach is to simply deadhead spent blooms as they fade and otherwise leave the plant alone. In doubt, treat any big leaf as old wood and you'll be fine. Now, technique. Whatever you cut, cut clean. Use sharp bypass pruners, not dull anvil ones that crush the stem and leave a ragged wound the plant struggles to heal. Make your cut at a slight angle just above a healthy pair of buds or a leaf node, so water runs off rather than sitting on the cut and rotting it. And before you move from one plant to the next, wipe your blades down, ideally with a little rubbing alcohol, so you're not carrying disease from one hydrangea straight into the open wound of another. A clean, well-placed, timed cut heals fast and pushes the plant in the direction you want. A crushed, badly timed cut invites rot, loses you flowers, and stresses the plant. Same 5 seconds of effort, completely different result. So there you have it, 7 rules, and notice how they build on each other. Know your type first, because old wood and new wood change everything. Hold back when in doubt. Leave the spent blooms through winter to guard next year's buds. Build a framework on your new wood types instead of cutting to the ground. Deadhead shallow and prune deep, and never confuse the two. Renovate the old giants slowly from the base and finish every cut clean and on time. Follow these and I promise you the bald summers stop. You'll get the cloud of blooms these plants are capable of, the kind that make a neighbor slow down on the path to look. Here's what I'd love for you to do right now. Go look at your hydrangea today before you forget and just figure out one thing. Is it old wood or is it new wood? That's it. That single piece of knowledge is worth more than every fancy tool in the shed. Then drop a comment and tell me which type you've got, and if you're not sure, describe the flower shape and I'll help you work it out. And if this saved your hydrangea from a bad haircut, subscribe and stick around. You won't want to miss the next one. I'll see you in the next video.